Hey guys, good morning. Hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be discussing the 7 books that I read in April. These videos tend to go a bit longer than I planned because I do rant a bit about 1 or 2 of the books. So we're just going to jump right in, starting from least favorite, working up to favorite. And number 7 on the list, we have The Stranger in the Woods. Charles, what you doing, buddy? Stranger in the Woods. So this I wasn't crazy about for a few different reasons. First thing, we'll just talk about the premise. It is based on a true story of a man named, I think, Christopher Knight, and he lived in Maine in the woods by himself, like almost no human contact for 27 years. As you can guess, when people found out about this, a lot of journalists wanted to get his story and kind of descended upon him. He left society to be alone. So obviously it was a bit of a culture shock coming back, being the center of so much attention, everyone wanting to talk to him, not to mention that he was on trial for like countless burglaries, because in order to survive, he had stolen from a campground that was like an hour or 2 away for 27 years. So it was like thousands of burglaries. He'd just go in people's homes and take their food or like their TV or their radio or batteries or stuff like that. He never hurt anyone or anything like that, but yeah, I mean, he didn't like survive off the land or build himself, like make a self-sustaining campsite. So one of the journalists, Finkel, tried to talk to him, wanted to get his story. This book is pretty much him speculating as to the reason that Christopher, I keep getting their names mixed up, that Christopher wanted to become a hermit, wanted to leave society, didn't want any contact with anyone, how he did it, why he did it. Christopher doesn't want to talk to him. I mean, he does speak to him a few times, but the main gist of the reason that I wasn't crazy about this book is because it feels like Christopher is exploited and taken advantage of. He's in this fragile mental state as he comes back, I'm sure, and it's this culture shock, and all these journalists, it seems, try to take advantage of that and like do interviews with us, or we'll pay you to talk to us and stuff like that. And I could be wrong. The author, Finkel, he could be a great guy. He could just like want to do good for this person, but it doesn't come across that way. Several times through the book, Christopher tells Michael, like, please leave me alone. I don't want to see you again. I don't want to talk to you. Like, don't contact me. And he continues to do it. Near the end of the book, there is one time where he has good reason for it because he's worried about his mental state. But all the other times just feel like you say you respect this guy and you say you're friends with him, but you always go against his wishes and try to like get more information out of him, and it just feels very like exploitative, I guess. That's how it came across to me. It also, for a book about that's trying to explain like why he did it. Charles, please stop. What are you doing? He knows like almost nothing about the why, because obviously, you know, Christopher isn't telling him, so it's more him speculating, and it feels like you're taking something really small and trying to stretch like more than what there is to try to make it into this book. I will say the most interesting part for me is when he talks about other religions, other countries, other cultures, how they treat hermits, and how hermits like their mission, I guess, in other countries, and their habits and why they do what they do. I would have read a whole book about that. But yeah, in the end, this wasn't for me. Next, number 6 on the list is a bit of a bummer for me, and that is Out of the Silent Planet by C.S. Lewis. Like a lot of people out there, C.S. Lewis was huge for me when I was in middle school. I think I read the Chronicles of Narnia, like all 7 books, probably like 10 times a piece, probably more than that. The writing was so charming, and it was written to you in a way that I liked, and very imaginative, all the talking animals, all the battles, all the magic. It was great. This is the first book in his space trilogy, so strike one for me is that it's, it's sci-fi, which I'm not usually a fan of. Not the book's fault. I went in knowing it was sci-fi, so I can't count that against it. But the premise sounds really interesting, but I just found it incredibly boring. It's about a man who's kidnapped from Earth by like an old classmate, and he's taken to another planet to be given as this like human sacrifice, and he manages to escape on said planet. That sounds like it should be great. I'm so sorry, C.S. Lewis. It was terrible for me. Like the first few chapters were fine, but once he got there, once he escaped, I'm like, what's going on? I don't know. It was not for me. Needless to say, I will not be continuing in this series. Number 5 on the list, I'm about to make a lot of people probably angry. I'm sorry. I had such high hopes for this one. This has been on my TBR for years, and I finally got around to it. And that is It by Stephen King. So this book, here comes the rant. This book, I did watch the original like mini series on TV and the 2 movie remakes. I absolutely love them. I think the story is really original, like something that takes your worst fear, like changes shape based on your fear, set in this kind of idyllic town where there's something nasty below the surface. It's about childhood, which I think King portrays really well. So for the 2 of you out there who don't know, this is based on a group of kids that we go back and forth in time from. So we go to when they were children, like I think 11, 12, 13 years old, and then currently to where they are adults, and they have all moved. Most of them have moved away, living separate lives. There is evil under the town of Derry, Maine. Every 27 years, something rises up from like the sewers and goes on a string of murders. And most of the time it's children who are murdered, who go missing. The people in the town are almost under like a spell. Like they're aware of this, but it's almost like they're kind of frozen, unable to do anything about it, or their eyes are kind of murky or something, because they'll see a lot of terrible things going on, but none of them ever step in to do anything about it. They all just seem a bit blind to it. This book is full of issues. There's racism, there's sexism, there's tons of bullying, there's animal cruelty, there's murder, there's what else is in here? Just every negative thing you can think of. And I think King is trying to provide some social commentary on how, despite this, like the surface of us, we can all have really horrible traits living within us, and how, you know, the worst monster out there isn't the monster, it's other humans. So I appreciate that stuff. There are a lot of scenes that I felt were difficult to read, and typically I'm okay with that as long as there is some sort of social commentary, as long as it's not done for like a cheap reaction. There's so many of those scenes in this book that I felt it became more of a, I'm just going to add as much awfulness into it as I can, rather than for a specific reason. I don't know, this book just, it did not scare me. Like, I really wanted to be scared, and this didn't scare me at all. And to be fair, King's books for me are really hit or miss. The Shining, I absolutely loved. I was completely like glued to it the whole time. This one was a miss. There are scenes, I keep talking about the awful scenes, but there's a reason for that. If you've read it, okay, let's just talk. If you've read it, you know about that scene in the sewers where there's like a child orgy, and these are like 12-year-old children, and they don't know what they're doing, and some of them kind of need to be talked into it. And I know it's odd to pick that scene because there are so many other things that happen that are equally terrible, but I'm just like, why? What's the point of this? Like, what does this add? Yeah, I don't know what to say. Because it's so highly rated and people love it so much, and I as I was reading it, I was just like, what? Like, yeah, it didn't do it for me. It was so freaking long. What's the one boy's name? Is it Richie? The really, really, really annoying one who does all those, like the voices and stuff. Oh my goodness, I just kept wanting, I'm like, please clown, can you get him? Like, if you're gonna get someone, please take care of him, because I'd like him gone. The next book, I did not mean to read 2 Stephen King books, it just happened. The next book is also by Stephen King, and that is Cell. I did enjoy this one more. This is about, look at Stephen King. Get out of here, ring light, look at him. I always like looking at like the different pictures of him in the back. So this is about pretty much like a zombie apocalypse, and it jumps right into the action, which I really like. So if you've ever seen Dawn of the Dead, it starts like that, where there's cars running into other cars, there's buildings exploding, there's like children trying to like kill people and cops shooting people, and it's just kind of utter chaos. So what happened is someone, we don't know who, sent out a pulse through cell phones. So anyone who was talking on their cell phone at the time, this pulse like erases their mind and returns them to a primitive state of being, which I guess is murder. Like, everyone becomes a murderer, because I guess that's who we are deep down. So the story focuses on Clay and another man whose name I don't remember. Who are you? Clay, someone, and Alice. Clay and this other dude find each other. They decide, we're gonna stick together and try to survive. Clay has a wife or ex-wife. I don't know if they've been divorced yet, but there's something going on there. And son in Boston. And he and this other man decide, okay, we're going to start heading in that direction. On the way, they meet a young girl named Alice. She's like 15 or 16. I want to say she's 16. And they decide to, bring her along and help her out as well. So it becomes this trio trying to get out of the city they're in, go along the highway, survive, make it past all these zombies. And it's not just the zombies that are awful. It does show how in the break of like such chaos, humanity does descend into like anarchy, and how people can be like worse than the zombies, which maybe Stephen King's got a point with everyone getting their mind wiped and going down to murder, because a lot of people go bad. So what happens when their mind is wiped is they're able to like access that other part of the brain. I think there's something about how human beings only like access a very small percentage of our brain. So because of the wipe, they're able to access the rest. So they're able to like levitate. They're able to communicate with each other like telepathically. They can communicate with people telepathically. They can get people to like kill themselves. Pretty scary zombies. I, for the most part, enjoyed this. As I was talking about with it, there's got to be a scene in there that I'm just like, why? What's the point? I couldn't find the exact passage, but from how I remember it, Alice, who is 16, and Clay, who is, I think it is like late 30s, early 40s, something like that, they arrive the first night of the apocalypse. They don't know if any of, like, Clay doesn't know if his son or his wife is even alive. Like, all his friends could be dead, blah, blah, blah. They arrive at this, like, safe house where they decide we're going to stay here for the night, we're going to rest. Alice is covered in her mother's blood because her mother ended up becoming a zombie, and I think Alice had to end up, like, killing her. Like, clearly, this is an awful day. They're completely exhausted, and Alice is like, okay, I'm gonna go, try to clean myself off upstairs. And Clay, the thought that comes to mind is he like pictured her going upstairs and taking off her clothes, and he was surprised that he didn't get aroused. He's like, it's been such an awful day that I didn't even get aroused. Like, wow, what? Like, what? Your son might be dead or a zombie. Like, the world is gone as you know. And you're like, oh, I didn't get aroused at the image of a 16-year-old naked girl? Why? Like, Stephen King, what are you doing? Like, why is that necessary? I don't get it. I don't know what that is supposed to do other than make me dislike Clay a little bit. But am I being too sensitive? I don't know. It just, there's no point to it. Tell me if I'm being too sensitive. Tell me if I'm overthinking this. I don't think I am. It's just such a really random thing to put in the book. It did end up on a cliffhanger that I really liked. So I did enjoy it more than it. Even in the midst of a zombie apocalypse, there was still less awfulness than there was in it. So I don't know. I'm going to try and read Carrie, I think, by Stephen King, because I've never read that one of his, next. So maybe I'll like that one more. Maybe that'll be a hit for me. Fingers crossed. We have reached the top 3 books. I will say I enjoyed all 3 of these books quite a lot. Number 3 on the list is The Winter People. This was a very atmospheric, eerie, creepy sort of novel, which was exactly what I wanted. So we go back and forth in time between 1908 and current day. In 1908, we're following a family, Sarah, her husband, and their daughter. Sarah has had quite a few miscarriages in the past. She's had children who haven't lived long, and they finally have a daughter, Gertie. And Sarah and Gertie are extremely close. They're very attached. They almost have like a secret language with each other. One day, Gertie is found dead at the bottom of the well. Sarah descends into this kind of mindset of like almost madness. And we don't know if like odd things start happening. And we don't know if it's because Sarah has like had a mental break and she's hallucinating things, or if something supernatural is going on. In the current day, we are following a family of a mother and 2 daughters. So unbeknownst to the daughters, they are living in Sarah's house. Sarah is kind of notorious in their area because 100 years ago, she died a very gruesome death, and people don't quite know who was responsible. The 2 sisters are Ruthie and Fawn. They wake up one day to find their mother has disappeared, and they keep waiting and waiting, and she just doesn't come back. So they live very off grid. They don't really have much contact with society, very isolated. So Fawn and Ruthie start kind of snooping around the house to try and get some clues to like why their mother disappeared or where she could have gone. While they are looking about, they find like a secret compartment under the floorboards that has Sarah's diary, as well as like a gun and some other suspicious things. And this is them pretty much trying to find their mother reading Sarah's diary, where really weird things are happening. So we keep going back and forth in time. Sarah's 1908, Sarah, is the timeline that just kept pulling me. It was like so interesting, so creepy. You're never quite sure. You're like, is this real? Is this not? Is she imagining it? I'm not sure. But it was really good. It kept me glued to the page. I kept wanting to know what happens next. So good book. Number 2 on the list is a big surprise to me personally, because it is a romance book and I typically just don't go for them. And that is People You Meet on Vacation. People We Meet on Vacation, sorry. This is about 2 friends, Alex and Poppy, who meet in college. Opposites if there ever were. Poppy is very like outgoing, loves to travel, bubbly, joking type of person, and Alex is kind of more internal, contained, a bit shy, a bit nerdy, which is great. But they get along really well. They meet in college and they decide that each summer we are going to go on a vacation together. In the present time, we don't know exactly what happened, but we know that something in the relationship went wrong. Alex and Poppy aren't really talking anymore, and they haven't seen each other for, I think, a few years. So what happens is we jump back and forth between like, now something's gone wrong, we don't know what, and then back to their first vacation, and then back to the now, and then back to the second vacation. So it's kind of going through this journey to learn why there was this split in the relationship. And as they try to repair things. It was really good. It will make you want to travel. At least it did me. I really wanted to go on vacation after reading that book. The romance is like a good slow burn romance, which I do prefer. It was really good. It was fun. It was funny. I did also like that it wasn't a kind of true love conquers all type of story. Like, even when they realize they have feelings for each other, there's still issues in life that get in the way. And it's not like, oh, we love each other, so that's all that matters, and like, we're going to live happily ever after. It wasn't that type of thing. They definitely had to work at it. And number 1 on the list for April, we have Foundryside. This was fantastic. This book is probably known for its magic system, which is really interesting without being like overly complicated where it will lose you. I would probably compare it to like coding. You can write sigils on certain objects, and that changes the reality of that object. So for example, they have like moving carriages in this world where you don't need a horse. You just put a certain sigil on the wheel of the carriage telling it that it's going downhill. So it changes gravity for the carriage, and then it will start moving. Some of the poor people live in like a slum area, and a lot of the wood for the buildings and the houses are like rotting. But you can put a sigil on like the foundation of the house that says stone, and the wood will think it's stronger, so it won't collapse as easy. So it's stuff like that the author uses in really interesting and like unique ways. The book is focused on a young thief named Sanchia. I think Sanchia. She is kind of this street hardened young woman who makes her living by stealing things for more powerful people. And her latest mission is she needs to steal something from a safe. And the money she's going to get from this job is pretty much going to take care of her for the rest of her life. She won't need to steal again. So she takes this job against her better judgment and ends up caught in something way bigger than she is. I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil anything, but there is this talking key, and he is amazing, and we love him, and his job is to unlock doors and other things, and he finds it such a challenge, and he always wants to find, like, give me a harder lock, like, I can do it, I can do this. Anyway, so she finds this key, and it is able to undo some of the magic in the world, or it's able to break it in a way that it shouldn't be, that kind of threatens to topple the way that their world has been assigned. So it's her. She meets a few other people. There's this one man who, what's his name? He's like a white knight kind of guy. He came back from the wars, and all he wants to do is good. And he's very, like, kind of that chivalrous type of the world is black and white mindset. So they're very different, and they team up as well as a few other people, go on adventures. I will say the book did start to get just a tiny bit monotonous because it pretty much was a cycle of her stealing things and then trying to escape and then finding out what this thing did, and then her stealing things and trying to escape, find out what this thing did, and then her stealing. Like, it was this cycle that kept going and going. I think there are 2 more books in the series, so I do need to go ahead and snap them up and continue reading. But look at that cover too. What a beautiful cover. This was really good. This was really fun. And that's it. That's the, did I read 6 or 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 books I read in April. We're what, halfway through May already? Yeah, halfway through May. So I'll have my May ones up in a few weeks. I've got another unhaul. I've got a stack of books over there that I really need to get rid of. Charles, do you want to say goodbye? Mr. Charles? Oop. Here he is. Who's that? Who's that, Charles? He's just taking a nap, and he's like, why did you make me get up? Mr. Charles here is still up for adoption. So if anyone is looking for a dog, look at this sweet face. He's like, why are you pointing me towards a bright light? I was taking a nap. He still needs a home, and he is at the Delaware Humane Animal Partners. If anyone wants to check that website out. He's going back to bed. Okay.